Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it. I sat at the kitchen table, the glow of the pendant light above us casting long shadows across Anne's face. Her arms were crossed, her jaw set in a hard line. The air between us crackled with tension. I could feel it, thick and stifling, as if the walls themselves were closing in. "You heard me, Daniel," she said, her voice sharp as a knife. "Obey me, or forget about intimacy." I stared at her, waiting for the weight of her own words to sink in. Did she even realize what she had just said? She tilted her chin up slightly, her expression unwavering, as if she expected me to crumble under the pressure, as if I would beg, plead, grovel for her affection. That was the moment everything clicked into place. This wasn't just an argument gone too far. This wasn't about a simple disagreement. No, this was something more sinister, a pattern, a cycle of control disguised as marital conflict, and I had played into it for far too long. A slow smirk crept onto my lips. I let out a chuckle, low and amused. Anne's eyes widened in shock for a brief moment before she quickly masked it with a scowl. "What the hell is so funny?" she snapped. I leaned back in my chair, still grinning. "Perfect," I said. "Keep it forever." Silence. The kind of silence that stretches, that grows unbearable the longer it lingers. She blinked, waiting for me to take it back, to explain that I was just angry and didn't mean it. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was just done. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the floor with a dull screech, and stood. No yelling, no slamming of doors, no desperate attempts to make her understand. I simply grabbed my phone off the table and walked out of the room. Anne's voice followed me down the hall. "Daniel, where do you think you're going?" I didn't answer. Instead, I walked into the bedroom, grabbed a pillow and blanket, and moved into the guest room without a word. There was no grand exit, no passive-aggressive remark, just quiet, firm detachment. She didn't follow me. Not immediately, anyway. I knew she was expecting me to cool off, to come back in an hour or two, tail between my legs, ready to negotiate my own dignity away. But that wasn't happening, not this time. Lying on the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, I let the realization settle in. I wasn't afraid of losing her, I was relieved. And that terrified her more than anything else. The morning after Anne's ultimatum, I woke up feeling different. Lighter. As if a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying had been lifted. There was no tension, no anxious need to fix things. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. I got out of bed, my bed now in the guest room, and stretched. The air felt different, freer. No pleading, no arguing, just silence. It suited me. I dressed simply, grabbed my keys, and left without a word. At the gym, I pushed my body harder than I had in years. Every press of the weights, every drop of sweat, felt like purging the old me, the one who constantly sought approval, who lived under Anne's thumb. The pain in my muscles was a welcome contrast to the numbness I had grown used to. After showering, I stepped into a department store and picked out a few crisp shirts, a tailored blazer, and a fresh pair of shoes. I had neglected myself long enough. That evening, I sat at the dining table, scrolling through my phone when Anne walked in. She paused, studying me as if trying to gauge my mood. When I didn't acknowledge her, she sighed dramatically and sat down across from me. "So, this is how it's going to be?" she asked, arms crossed. I finally looked up. "What do you mean?" She scoffed. "You ignoring me, acting like you don't care." I shrugged. "I'm just focusing on myself." Anne's lips thinned. "You're being ridiculous." "No, Anne," I said, setting my phone down. "For the first time, I'm being rational." Her eyes flickered with something, uncertainty, maybe even fear. She wasn't used to this, wasn't used to me not playing her game. I stood, taking my plate to the sink. "I'll be out for a bit." "Where are you going?" she demanded, voice sharp. I turned, meeting her gaze with an impassive stare. "Does it matter?" Without waiting for a response, I grabbed my jacket and walked out, leaving her sitting there, alone with the realization that things were changing. And this time, I wasn't going back. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. Anne, who had spent the last few days pretending to be indifferent, now seemed to linger in my periphery more often than before. I catch her standing in the doorway of the guest room as if she had something to say, only to walk away when I didn't acknowledge her. She began timing her movements around mine, walking into the kitchen just as I was fixing my coffee, standing by the hallway when I returned from the gym. It was obvious she was trying to get a reaction, but I refused to give her one. One evening, as I settled onto the couch with my laptop, she strolled in, tossing a casual glance my way before dropping onto the chair across from me. She crossed her legs, her foot bouncing slightly, a telltale sign of irritation. "How much longer are you going to ignore me? This seems like real childishness," she finally said, breaking the silence. I closed my laptop slowly and met her gaze, my expression unreadable. "I'm not ignoring you, Anne. I just don't have anything to say." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "So, because you didn't get your way, you're throwing a tantrum?" I let out a short, humorless laugh. "A tantrum?" I repeated, shaking my head. "No, Anne. I just realized I don't need to waste my energy on meaningless arguments." She bristled at that, but didn't push further. Instead, she stood, brushing invisible lint from her pants. "You'll come around," she muttered before walking away. But I didn't. Over the next week, her tactics escalated. She started dressing up more, wearing the outfits she knew I once loved. Her perfume lingered in the hallway, an intentional reminder of what she thought I missed. She casually mentioned dinner invitations from mutual friends, waiting for a flicker of jealousy in my eyes. When none came, she grew more frustrated. Then came the late-night encounters. I'd be heading to bed when she would accidentally cross my path, brushing against me in the narrow hallway, her touch lingering just a second too long. She started sitting closer on the couch, her knee nearly touching mine, watching for any reaction. But I gave her nothing. Then, one evening, as I was heading out for a walk, she finally broke the silence. "You've been out a lot," she noted, leaning against the doorway, her arms crossed. I nodded as I laced my shoes. "Yeah." She hesitated. "Doing what?" I smirked. "Living." That single word hit her harder than anything else I could have said. Her confidence wavered for just a moment before she masked it with a scoff. But I saw it, the realization, the panic. She was losing her grip on me, and she knew it. As I walked past her and out the door, I felt lighter than I had in years. The game had begun, but the outcome was already clear. She was going to lose. Anne's attempts to regain control had grown desperate, calculated smiles, forced kindness, sudden bursts of affection. I ignored them all. My silence unnerved her, and I knew she felt the shift. I was no longer reacting, no longer seeking her approval. The power she once wielded over me had crumbled, and she knew it. One evening, as I came home from the gym, she stood in the kitchen, arms crossed. The tension was thick. "You're late," she said, forcing a smile. "I made dinner." I glanced at the neatly plated meal on the table, something she hadn't done in months. I simply nodded and grabbed a protein shake from the fridge. "You're not even going to sit down?" she asked, frustration creeping into her voice. "I'm good," I replied, taking a sip. She exhaled sharply. "You've changed, Daniel. You think I don't see it. You barely talk to me. You act like I don't exist." I set the bottle down. "You wanted control, Anne. You got it. Now you're upset because I won't play the game anymore." She stiffened. "This isn't a game." I let out a dry chuckle. "To you, it always has been." Her face twisted with anger. "So that's it. You're just going to throw our marriage away." I met her gaze, steady and unwavering. "No, Anne, you threw it away the moment you turned it into a power struggle." She scoffed, arms tightening around herself. "You think you're better off without me?" I didn't hesitate. "I know I am." For the first time, I saw real fear flicker in her eyes. The realization hit her. I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't waiting for her to change. I was done. A long silence stretched between us before she turned away, gripping the counter. "You're making a mistake," she muttered. I picked up my keys. "No, Anne, I'm correcting one." And with that, I walked out, leaving behind the last remnants of the life I no longer wanted. The divorce was finalized with a single signature. No heated arguments, No drawn-out battles, just a quiet, clinical end to a marriage that had long been over. Anne walked away, her confidence shattered, while I remained exactly as I had been before she entered my life, financially secure and now emotionally free. The house was mine, the assets untouched, and she walked away with only what she had brought into the marriage, which wasn't much. That evening, I sat on my balcony with a glass of bourbon, the city lights stretching endlessly before me. There was no sadness, no regret, just relief. My phone buzzed. A message from Lisa, one of the women I had been seeing. "Lisa, drinks tonight?" I smirked, tapping my fingers against the rim of my glass. I had options, freedom, and no obligations. But for the first time in a long while, I wasn't in a rush to fill the silence. A knock at the door broke my thoughts. I opened it to find Anne standing there, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. "You're really not coming back," she said softly. I leaned against the doorframe. "No, Anne, I'm not." She swallowed hard. She hesitated, searching for something, anything, that might change my mind, but she found nothing. I waited a beat before speaking. "Take care of yourself." My voice was calm, final. She blinked, swallowed hard, then turned and walked away. I shut the door, locking the past behind me. As I stepped back onto the balcony, I exhaled, truly free for the first time in years. The night stretched ahead, full of possibilities, and I knew, without a doubt, I would never look back. Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.